Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin', Fantasy Champs?
What's up?
These last year. Welcome to Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon, by the way. Last year, I literally did not win a fantasy championship. I got shafted by injuries. And I think it was in 6 leagues.
And COVID.
Yeah, dude, it was a bad year. I had a really bad year. I think I made it to 1 championship, and then 3 people got on the COVID list, and I got pooped on, and I was like, okay, all right. Had enough of that. But this year, I'm in 2 leagues. And as we are currently talking, it is a Monday, so we're transitioning to off-season content in this show, but I still have a little bit of fantasy football left to play as we chat on this podcast, so I don't know if I won. I'll let you know literally next week.
Bro, that's going to be tough if you go 2 straight years. I think you won. I think you're pretty good.
Yeah, I should be all right. It would be tough if I didn't win a championship in 2 straight years, because that would be terrible. That
wouldn't be very brand of you.
I have an allergic reaction to league winners.
Yeah, last 2 years.
So anyway, I had a league where I had Debo and Cooper Kupp, freaking Debo and Cooper Kupp, and I lost. How does that happen?
What? That's insane, dude. That's actually that I feel really bad for you about that one. That should not have happened.
League winners of league winners, and I still lose.
I took the championship in 2 leagues. One of them, I really don't think I was the best team. I just kind of benefited
from situational stuff.
Yeah, and that's the league that I'm in with you that I officially won.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my team is okay, but I don't think it's championship. I think it's just because my quarterback.
You robbed the person who set. It was a kick. League of Ordinary Gentlemen, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So this league we kicked off startup draft. I can't remember. I think it was like early summer.
Yeah.
And a team just went all in on this year, like absolutely all in. All the old men drafted to the roster.
Was stacked.
Like, he's going to be very, very bad in like 2 years. It's kind of going to be sad. He won't know what to do. But he went all in for the win, and he lost in the first round.
Yep. He's 3rd place, though.
3rd place. Congratulations. 3rd place gets you zilch, by the way. Winner take all. So, anyway.
Yep.
But as we transition away, congratulations if you won your fantasy championships. If you're just raging because you lost, you can rage in the comments all you want.
Yeah.
Just yell at us, yell at anything.
And Antonio Brown running off the field.
Yes, exactly like that. Just
when he was waving to the fans, he was waving at you, being like
saying goodbye to your fantasy championship because I only scored 5 points.
Yep, that's exactly what he was saying. Goodbye to your fantasy championship.
Yeah. So we're transitioning now on the podcast for the fantasy champions to off-season content. And I like to theme each month of these segmented months where we're waiting for football to come back. Because we always talk about the same kind of stuff in each month. So, like, there's draft month, and there's, a season recap month, and different stuff like that. NFL draft month, and then fantasy draft month. So there's all kinds of stuff. And there's a month for free agency. Do we spend a whole month talking about free agency? I don't know.
I don't know if we spent a whole month, but we definitely have a couple shows about it.
But anyway, so this month we are going to spend recapping the 2020 season, just going through some of the things that happened, some of the things that did not happen that we thought might. And on the first 2 episodes of this recap month, we're going to hit on our biggest misses and our biggest hits of the 2020 season, or 2021 season, I should say. So we'll go through some guys that we absolutely nailed, some predictions we hit very hard on, and then we're going to go through some guys that were just complete misses, and we're sorry for destroying your season.
Definitely had a little bit of both. I think we did pretty good this year.
Yeah, I think we did pretty good. But we'll start with our biggest misses on this show, and we're going to give 5 of our biggest misses. I labeled them so that you know who screwed the pooch on these. But anyway, before we do that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all those platforms. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms, please leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you may have as we jump into the off season. And let us know if you won your championship. That would be great too.
Yeah.
So, do you have any thoughts before we kick off the good old program, my guy?
No, I think it's it. I'm just excited that I won 2 championships, and I'm hoping for Nick Chubb tonight, so I can say I won 3.
Really? How many?
It would be kind of tough if neither of us won the Fantasy Champions League that we're in 2 years in a row. We both haven't won.
Yeah, that would be stupid.
Yeah. Fine.
Dynasty League. To be fair.
It's true.
To be fair, I believe that was the first startup draft that we ever managed.
Yeah, it was the first. So. Yeah, our teams are both pretty good though. You just got injured.
I got very injured.
I got injured too, but whatever.
Yeah. Anyway,
not as bad as you.
So let's go through our biggest misses of the 2020 season. Got to hold us accountable.
This is the L's. This is the L show.
The L show. This is where we got to hold ourselves a little bit accountable for the mistakes that we made in preparation for the draft. And we are going to do a show specifically pertaining to some lessons we learned from the season, some good, some bad. And we'll go through that when that time comes. But these are guys we just completely swung and struck out, like Aaron Judge.
Nice. Screw the Yankees.
Yeah, screw the Yankees. So let's jump in with the first one. And this was mine. This is one of my big predictions on the year. I believe you go back to the bold prediction show that we did earlier this offseason, and you can find my sleeper app just crashed. Great. You can find my prediction on edwards-helaire. You know, it'd be fun if I put the clip in here, but I don't want to spend the time editing that. I need an editor.
Yeah.
You guys are editors, and you want to edit for free for us.
I mean, I do have the show if you want. It would still be a lot, though.
Yeah, no. But anyway, so we have at the running back position, I said Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be a top 5 running back this year. The I remember people were doubting. You were doubting that he was going to be really good. And I was like, I'm just going to come out and say that he's going to be top 5. And hopefully you didn't draft him that high. Because he's running back 36 on the year.
Yeah.
But he only played in 10 games. So some people might be like, okay, he should have finished higher. He definitely probably would have finished top 20 had he played all of his games. But he did only average 9.8 points per game on the season, which for a running back in half PPR on a team that throws it a lot, for a running back that has pass catching ability and that should be getting a lot of pass catching work, he should be a lot higher. And he just wasn't.
Yeah. I didn't hate this take, okay, because not at all. I was a big fan of Clyde. I took him in a draft. I wanted to take him in our home league. He was definitely in consideration for my pick. I think I took him in a best ball league one of the best ball leagues that I did. But yeah, I don't know. The problem with Clyde, man, is they don't use him in the way that he should with the Chiefs. And unfortunately, I'm going to say this right now, I don't know if that's ever going to change.
Yeah. I agree.
He came into this league as a pass catching running back. All his player comps were pass catching running backs. He's pretty much a wide receiver at the running back. He's a security blanket for quarterbacks. Yet in this season, he only had 23 targets. And I know he only played 10 games, so he was on pace for that's probably like close to 40 targets, maybe just under that. But if you have a running back like this, he needs to be getting like 67 targets a season. And he doesn't do that. And because of that, he's never going to reach the ceiling that I think he should in the offense that he's in, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, he wasn't awful when he was out there this year, but fully healthy. But it's just tough, man, for Clyde, because I still like the player, but
yeah, and it's funny too because like you look at Clyde and how he performs and plays and how they utilize him, and it's very, very confusing. And then you look at so when Clyde is out, Darrell Williams comes in, okay?
Yep.
And they target him a lot.
They did. Yep.
They targeted him more than they targeted Clyde on the season. And I know Williams played all the season, but there were games where they had 9 targets, 4 targets, 6 targets, 5 targets to Darrell Williams down the stretch where, Clyde didn't play. So it's like you have a running back you drafted in the first round that you're not utilizing like your backup running back who's 26 years old. Like I don't get what the Chiefs are doing. Like they have a great offense. They have a great offensive coach, Andy Reid. And I really don't have the wherewithal or the ability to say that I would know better than Andy Reid, but I just don't know what they're doing with Clyde. And I don't know if it's a Clyde thing or it's a Chiefs thing where there's more respect for Clyde, so they just don't give him the ball as much and they throw it down the field. They use him as a decoy. I have no idea. Because Darrell Williams sucks. Like, he's not good. Yeah, when they throw him in there when he's the starter, he ends up playing really well. And that's the expectation that you want. Like those games that Clyde missed, that Darrell Williams played in and started, he had 22, 6, 14, 9, 24. Like I would imagine that that's a top 10 running back if I did the numbers out for that stretch of games. So I just don't get it. Now, Clyde is also hella inconsistent, so that's another problem that he has. But what are our expectations moving forward now quickly with Clyde going into 22?
Yeah. I mean, it's been 2 years now where we've expected big things from him, and he hasn't really produced. He has been bad. He just hasn't reached the expectations that we've had for him. I would say at this point, I'm not going to predict him as a league winner. I'm not going to predict him as a breakout. I think he kind of is what he is until they just change. What is it?
Until the status quo changes.
Yeah, until they start using him differently. And to be honest, you can't predict that. That's just going to happen if it happens. Andy Reid will just decide. But right now, it doesn't look likely for him. I think he's a fine flex player, low end RB2 type player.
He reminds me a little bit of Josh Jacobs.
Not
in terms
that's
of
pretty much
play style because they're kind of different running backs, but
that's what he is at this point.
In terms of fantasy, like numbers
and would you
wise.
For 2022, would you rather have Jacobs or Clyde?
Josh Jacobs.
Yeah,
because
but he's in that category.
The Raiders like to use Josh Jacobs.
It's very close, but I would probably agree with you.
Now we're talking like I'm thinking that he's dropped because of the scarcity of the running back position, and injuries are going to happen over the offseason. I would imagine that he's going to be a 4th round pick, maybe 5th.
Yeah, I mean, that's still not bad. That's not bad
for him.
Yeah,
and it's a good, like for you, it might be a good value when the season comes along. But if he starts getting hyped into the 2nd or 3rd round, I'm willing to back out on him.
Yeah,
and not buy in, because what was he, a 2nd round pick this year?
He was like a late 2nd. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, who was give me, because this one's yours, Rick. Give me the second biggest miss.
Yeah, I swung and missed on this one. My I think in my bold prediction show I said Terry McLaurin would be a top 5 fantasy wide receiver, and that definitely did not happen. And look, he started off pretty good, and he was getting heavily targeted, and he was making big plays. Did you see that one-handed catch he had in the beginning of the year? I think it was like week 3. Mm-hmm. Like ridiculous stuff. He's super talented. But the problem with McLaurin is the same as it was last season. And in the bold prediction show that we did, one of the things I was really hyped about was with Fitzpatrick there. Fitzpatrick's just going to chuck it to him. If he gets another 134 targets, his yards per reception will probably go up, which it did, but didn't really do much for him. and he'll score more than 4 touchdowns. So it was one of my biggest arguments. He did. He had 5 touchdowns instead of 4, which doesn't really change anything. And he actually had less catches and was less efficient with Taylor Heineke. There were games this year, man, where you would watch McLaurin would do something. I think against New Orleans, he had 11 targets, 4 catches. There was a couple games like that against the Chiefs, 8 targets, 4 catches, where he would get open and Heineke would just miss them, or they weren't on the same page. He rarely drops passes. I still believe in the player. I still like McLaurin, but until they get a quarterback there, it's just not going to change the fact that he's really not a wide receiver 1. And at this point, he's a low end wide receiver 2.
Yeah, I agree. Looking forward into the future too, I think McLaurin will probably end up being a 6th or 7th round pick would be my guess.
I'd still draft him.
Yeah, no, honestly, if you can get because I was getting I got a guy like Jerry Jeudy in that slot. Obviously, he was hurt most of the season. When he came back, he really didn't play great. But he's one of those wide receivers who happens to be on a not so great offense that doesn't really produce well. And I think this is a decent segue because I have something specific to say on this for the number 3 biggest miss, because we can talk about conjointly, I guess, the problems over there in Washington. But it was Antonio Gibson, and I said he is going to be a top 5 running back in fantasy football.
Now, this one wasn't. I mean, it's definitely a miss, but it's not like there's been worse. There's
been worse misses. So in half PPR, our guy Antonio Gibson ended as the RB12 through 15 games. So he's very similar to what he was last year. But I look at Gibson as my miss from, because I actually, it's funny because I was all in on Gibson. Like, give me him in the early second round. I think this guy's going to be top 5. He's going to break out, have a really good season. And didn't get him in any leagues because it just didn't end up falling in that direction. So I didn't, suffer like I did with Miles Sanders previously. But he kind of had a lot of hype surrounding him and then didn't really live up to that hype. And he missed 1 game, and through 15 games, he had 186 fantasy points, 12 fantasy points per game. He ended up the running back 12 through 17 weeks. So he was really, really good and had a really, really good season. But it's just a very similar season to what he did the previous year. He didn't really make any strides or improvements in his play style or the way he was, performing. And I don't think that's him. I think that's Washington, which I'll get to in a second. But when you look at Gibson, I thought he was going to be a top 5 back because this guy is a wide receiver coming out of college.
Yes.
And you would imagine that this football team would use a wide receiver out of the backfield as like Debo. Like,
you know what, though?
And
I agree with you, yeah.
They didn't use Antonio Gibson like that because they had J.D. McKissick, because they had what they would consider their pass-catching running back. And so that has been in Gibson's problem. And that was the same thing with Miles Sanders, where I looked at Sanders the previous year and I said, okay, this guy is going to be a breakout because I think he can be that. We're looking for the next Christian McCaffrey pass-catching running back that's going to get 110 targets and just completely destroy people through the air. And like, it's funny because we look at Clyde, we expected him to be that. We look at Antonio Gibson, we expected them to be that. Last year in the 2020 season, when I didn't get Miles Sanders right, I expected him to be that. So when you expect these guys to get pass catching work and they don't, that's where the prediction kind of goes sour. Now, Gibson had a good season. Like, I mean, where you drafted him is probably exactly where he finished, flat even. But were you in the fantasy championship because you made this really great draft pick? No.
Right.
So I don't know if you want to give your thoughts on Gibson before I explain the more macro.
I'll just quickly say I think Gibson was good. And the point I was gonna bring up was when you brought up McKissick. When McKissick went down, they all of a sudden started using Gibson like that. He got targeted 7 times, 6 times, 2 against Dallas, but then 7 again against Philly and 4 against Dallas before he got hurt in that game. So, like, he was starting to get used like that, and at the end of the season, it felt like this was the Antonio Gibson we were going to get. But through, like, the first 11 weeks of the season, though, he was just not that great. His biggest problem too was his efficiency was way down this year compared to last year, and I don't know if that's because
quarterback.
If it's a problem with the quarterback, if it was offensive line.
Last year, who did they have at quarterback?
It was it was a mix of players. It was a mix of players. It wasn't Fitzpatrick. Patrick was on the Washington.
Because I know they was on with Heineke Dolphins. At the end of the season, but
Heineke was at the end. I know they had Kyle Allen for a stretch. They had
wow,
Alex Smith. They had Alex Smith.
Oh, he was actually he wasn't good stats wise, but he was helping the team move the ball down the field. So
yeah, he was Gibson. Yeah.
But no, I think the larger issue with Gibson and Terry McLaurin is and this is something that I think we'll talk about most likely for another year, because I can't stop myself from buying in on players for another year on the Lessons Learned podcast or episode that we do, is buying into these really, really not great offenses, thinking that they're going to be really good. Even if we make the assumption that Ryan Fitzpatrick plays the whole season, is the expectation that offense is going to be really good with Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback? Probably not. And so, sometimes with players, you just fall in love with them and you close your eyes and say, I don't care. I don't care if he's on a bad team. I just want him to be really good. And then they get in the season and you spend so much time looking at the numbers that you can somehow make up the fact that he could somehow be really, really good in a bad offense. And there's a select few players in the NFL that can be on a bad offense and have success. Christian McCaffrey is one of those people. And not every time a player is on a bad offense, is that going to be successful, right? We have a breakout player that we nailed this year in Deandre Swift, but he was on freaking a terrible offense in Detroit. And so it limited his consistency because they just weren't good enough to be good for the whole entire season. So when they were bad, Swift was bad. And when they were really good, Swift was really good. And so it's the same thing with Terry McLaurin and Gibson, where there were weeks where they were really good, but their production and their efficiency is tied to the success of their offense. And if you don't take that into account as a fantasy player, you're going to end up drafting guys that bust out on you when you think they're going to be really good.
I mean, we can talk about this when we get to that show, but if you look at the top players,
right,
95% of them in the top 12 at running back and at wide receiver are on good offenses. Not just good, but the best offenses in the league. The Rams, the Packers, the Bengals,
you get these
the Chiefs.
Brando guys, right? Running back position, for example. JT, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, all great offenses. Leonard Fournette, top 5, all great offenses. Zeke, one of the best offenses in the NFL. James Conner,
one
of the best offenses in the NFL. The only one in that top 7 that I just mentioned. Go ahead, say it, Rick.
Well,
Najee.
He's the next guy I was going to say, but
Cordero Patterson. Yeah, he plays. I was going to say Najee Harris, though. I mean, the Steelers were an anomaly this year.
But even the Steelers, for as bad as their offense is, they still put up a decent. They're not the worst offense in the league.
Yeah, they're mediocre, middle.
Because they have a lot of great skill position players like Najee Harris.
Yep. And so, but you even keep going down. Nick Chubb, Alvin Kamara. Like Rick said, we'll talk about this on probably
those. Those are bad offenses, but those two players are the best of the best.
Well, Nick Chubb is not even on a bad offense. That's a decent offense in the NFL. And Kamara is on a bad offense, but Aaron Jones is not. He's number 9.
Yeah, true. Right.
It's like Rick said, 80 to 90% of the guys in the top 10, top 12 are.
Wide receiver position is the same thing.
You have a better shot of drafting a guy in a good offense, even if it's not a sexy, great pick. It's not a breakout pick. But you have a better shot at success doing that than saying, I'm going to hit on the one guy in that bad offense. It just doesn't work. So I think that's the main reason why we kind of struck out on Gibson and McLaurin there, 2 Washington guys. But anyway, let's quickly go through the next couple guys. And it's not going to take too long to get through them because it was kind of just a big strikeout and miss, and there's not much to discuss on them. But we both got these guys wrong, so I'll do 4, and Rick, you can do 5.
Sure.
So Adam Trotman and Cole Komet, we both pegged them. We both pegged them as breakouts, and obviously the Bears was a situation where they were going back and forth between quarterbacks and injuries and all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, the Cole Komet breakout never really came to fruition. There's some good signs there in Chicago that he could be a really good tight end for them when Justin Fields figures it out and other things.
Maybe as soon as next year, too. He could be a good player. But
right, exactly. So I think Cole Komet will be okay. There was one guy that I was really in on all offseason, though, just because of the Michael Thomas injury and the lack of weapons that they had, and then they have Jameis Winston, and he's a good passer, so he can probably move the ball. And it was Adam Trotman, and I believe he ended up getting hurt. But even when he was on the field, he sucked. Like he wasn't good for fantasy at all. And I thought maybe they would target Adam Trotman because I would argue that is probably their best offensive weapon at this point. Because they suck everywhere else, besides Kamara, obviously. But like I thought they were going to target Trotman a little bit more this year, and it obviously wasn't the year. And these tight ends, they're only in year two too, so it usually takes these kids 3-4 years to develop. I mean, Gesicki is in his 4th, 5th year, and that's when he finally like came onto the scene as one of the top tight ends in the NFL. And when I say that, I mean like top 10 because tight ends below. But yeah, it's just we struck out on both of these guys, and I think it was I think it was a little bit too early to roll out the breakout train for Adam Trotman and Cole Komet.
I think it was a little too early as well, and I think it was just us trying to hit on the next guy. It's still they were late picks. They were like 15th round picks, so it wasn't like we lost anybody leagues by taking Trotman or Cole Komet. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was just us trying to find. I think that because the year before we had a couple like T.J. Hawkinson.
Yeah, we hit on Hawk, Noah Fant, we hit on. But
Dallas
for the last
Goedert.
3 years, I think we've hit on at least one tight end.
But we had the same mindset this year of like, okay, Hawkinson and Fant had bad rookie years, but they were rookies, and then they hit in year 2.
They're also two of the best
those guys
guys to come out.
Exactly, those guys were first round picks and high end prospects. Trotman and Cole Komet. Cole Komet's a very good prospect, and I like Trotman too. They're good prospects, but they're not T.J. Hawkinson level.
They kind of have to earn their way to target share and
a little bit, yeah. And then the last guy was we had him pegged as a league-winning quarterback,
just based on draft position.
Yes, yeah, based on draft position, which is Ryan Tannehill. And you're probably thinking, you guys are idiots. That's disgusting, all that stuff.
That might have been the worst, I think, of all of the misses we have.
It might have been. It was bad. But there's a base. It didn't come out of nowhere. Tannehill, when he took over as the Titans starting quarterback in his first year in 2019, was the QB3.
Wow.
The QB3.
Yep.
Last season was the QB8. He was getting drafted as like the QB 10 or 11.
Yep.
And we're like, this is free value for a guy who's now has almost 2 full years of evidence behind him being a top 8 fantasy quarterback. He now has Julio Jones. You can make the argument. I mean, at this point in his career, it's close to me, but I think Julio is obviously an upgrade over Corey Davis. Another year of AJ Brown. So he has weapons. What could go wrong? Then all the guys got hurt. And to be honest, he has also kind of sucked. He's come back down to earth. I think teams are figuring it out. He looks exactly like Tannehill from the Miami Dolphins.
Derrick Henry, having Derrick Henry kind of helps too.
I think that, but he even before then, he wasn't doing good.
Right.
He wasn't doing great. I feel like I got to sneeze, but I'm not sneezing. This is so bad. I thought
you burped, and I was like, wow.
No.
Smooth.
The sneeze is like coming any minute, but it's not. At the same time, this is horrible. Anyway.
The funny thing is if you look at the numbers, Tannehill ended up being QB 13, which is freaking hilarious.
So gross.
No, but I think like Rick said, it was just, for me, it was value. And, obviously something that's been really different about Tannehill this year that he didn't really have a problem with last year is that there's usually rushing involved. Whether it's rushing touchdowns or a base floor of 40 to 50 yards a game, that's what you were kind of getting out of him. So when you look at just his passing in the last 2 years with Tennessee, it turned out to be like 15, 16 points a game, but then he added 4 or 5 fantasy points on the ground, which got him up to 20, 25, fantasy points per game. And this year, the rushing just was kind of there sometimes, but it didn't really come to fruition for most of the season, which led Ryan Tannehill to a place where, he ends up being the QB 13 or 14 and a QB 2, which is not what you're looking for, for your fantasy team, especially if you draft this guy in the 10th, 11th round. I mean, that's a real waste of a draft.
I was thinking that too, but I mean, last year he had 33 passing touchdowns. He only has 17 this year. And his turnovers too. Last year he only had, I think that's another big thing that's underrated. He had 8 turnovers last season total. Mm-hmm. So only 7 picks and 1 lost fumble. Yep. This year he has 18 turnovers, 14 interceptions, 4 fumble losses. So it's another thing that I think lowers his weekly point total every week. That's minus 2 points than what he should be getting almost pretty much every single week. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's just multiple things with Tannehill. Multiple things. Yep. But yeah, we got that one wrong.
I agree. So there you go. Our biggest misses. Got to get that outro playing. Biggest misses of the 2021 season. We like to hold ourselves accountable, give you guys the real information here, and tell you what we got wrong so we can get better for next year and help you guys win fantasy championships. We'll talk to you Thursday, guys.
Talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.